like when I was getting out of high school and stuff, I was like getting into sales myself and did painting sales and stuff as well. And then did some insurance sales and a couple other things. And it didn't stay very long. And I think it was because of the same thing. Like the sales methods that I was learning were super high pressure. And I appreciate learning them because one, I learned what I don't want to do. And two, there's like the 1% of time that you may want to let pull on that lever just a tiny bit, not in a manipulative way, but just it's like having the skill and not needing it is better than needing the skill and not having it, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
I didn't like those processes, man. I mean, in
Right.
some areas like life insurance, door to door is like some door to door. There's some people that do door to door ethically, like Justin Georgopoulos does it really, really ethically. But there's a lot of
Killer.
high pressure door to door that's like really, really cutthroat.
Hey.
Car sales is still predominantly like this, and not all of them, but still predominantly. And so I learned all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't like sales. And also in these generations, and probably still so in like TV and movies and pop culture, it's like sales is always like presented as something that's almost sleazy, you know. And so I got out of it for years, and I was like, I'm never going back to sales again. And then I was sort of forced into sales. It's a long story. I won't bore people with on this podcast, but I was kind of forced back into it for a company I was building. Like there was just no one else that could do it. So I like had to temporarily take it, and I had to kind of build the system and then hire and train people to do it. And then so I was kind of like got back into it, and I was like, well, I just don't want to do it this way. So I started trying other things, kind of like you, and I found like a few really good influences for me, like that kind of helped build what my current repertoire is now in my sales skills is, you know, it's a helping, not selling type mentality, right?
Sure.
Some people call it coaching type selling or consultative type selling. Like my viewpoint now is like, I want to help people, guide them to where it's at,
Right.
where is best for them, regardless of
Yep.
what like happens to me. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right? It's like it's sometimes it's a one meeting thing and you close it, and sometimes it's not. And whether it takes 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 years, it's like you're just there and you're ready and helping. So my question to you is because I know that like from you describing it, what you do and how I operate, there's a ton of similarity, right? Um, and I bet if we were to really get in the weeds, it'd be even more similar than we probably think right now. But my question to you is, who are some of the sales or communications books or people or speakers or coaches or whatever along your journey that have been meaningful to you and have helped you like learn from, um, if any?
Okay. So yeah, I think um influences wise, I really like Bill Berg. I really like his material. I think I just think it's fantastic. Uh, Old school sales, Jeffrey Gitmer is a name that I don't know if you know who that is or not, but Jeffrey,
I know who it is, but I haven't read any books.
yeah, all his books are marked by this thing where he'll say, the 7.5 keys to this or the
Yeah,
9.3 keys to that.
yeah.
And so that was hugely valuable to me. And certainly I've definitely gleaned a lot from Grant Cardone. And I've consumed a lot of his content. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that he's necessarily a mentor of mine, uh, except in a few areas, but not in um, not in that sort of, uh, you know, getting somebody to make a decision right now for my sake.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes folks, it's a huge help to them, and if you frame it that is a huge help to them to make a decision in the call, or in one meeting, then it truly is. It truly can be. But there's definitely a tone and a style that isn't me in the Grant Cardone world. Although I definitely admire him and admire a lot of a lot of the people that work with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in general, he's too pushy. my style and in
Right.
the companies that I own and involved in. It's definitely
Yeah.
not my style of doing it.
Yeah.
I think he's in a real estate space. I think in that space it makes a little bit more sense. It's very a little bit niche to niche, and you know there's different ways. Like, I mean, business to business is different to business to consumer, right? Selling a car is different than selling a
Yeah,
coaching
it's
program.
interesting. If you ever got it, if you were ever to get, if you ever got on their list, and of course, I was a member of Cardone
I
University,
am.
and
Yeah.
so, when they had conferences and all of that stuff, I would get calls from guys, and sometimes I would
Mhm.
book a call with them, and they show up with the complete suit on, and they've
Mhm.
got, there's obviously this stand-up place that they do their calls in that has a
Mhm.
background behind them, and
Yep.
it's just it's and this is all just to get me to go to a conference and spend a
Yeah.
thousand
Like
bucks
the
to
the
to
10x. Yeah.
10x conference, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And just so well trained, and go from one, and just won't let you go, and just and I get it. I think it's great. Um but and I think there's confidence that I gain from that. There are things that I definitely learn from that. Uh, However, when it comes to home services, especially painting, where you're in somebody's home on a very intimate level, you're crawling around every square inch of their house. If
Yeah,
they're retired,
I think it's a different playbook at that point.
they're going to be home. We just did a raw job recently where we were doing all of the main floor areas, and the folks were home all day. So
Yeah.
if the painters even made a sound like, oh, the people
They'd
would
hear.
react and be like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
You know, A- a- and so the problem is that when you get somebody to a decision who necessarily didn't want to go there, um,
Mhm.
you don't create an environment where you're welcome. Or sometimes what happens is, if a painting salesperson goes out and sells a job with one spouse, and they sell the job and they show up to do the work, many times that spouse is not there. It's the other spouse that you've never met before, and they may or may not even agree with you being there. So if you do, if you do, a couple thousand projects, you run into these situations where you never want that happening, where somebody doesn't want you in the house, because I've done that, and I've closed uh, a spouse. And when we got to the job, that spouse was not there. It was the other spouse who didn't agree with us even being there. And to the painters, the spouse was, saying things like, "Oh, I can't believe you guys are doing that. Do you have to, can you not be done by 3 o'clock today? Like, my kids are coming home. And
Yeah.
if you could just come at 10 tomorrow, that would be great." Like,
Yeah.
it's great to sell a $20,000 job, but you really want to make sure that you're welcome. And in my opinion, that you can't twist somebody's arm. That's how jobs get canceled. That's how people want deposits back. You really want them to be super happy that you're coming.
So
So
I
that's
heard
been
this.
my experience.
I had this isn't for me, it's for my dad. My dad was in sales like his whole life, except for a few years in the military. So he started selling as a teenager, and he's since passed away, but he told me when he was a kid, he got his start selling Hoover vacuums door to door. Right? This is like it's
Wow.
like in the 60s, man. You know what I mean? So this is a
Yeah.
long time ago. And so he's like in, early to mid 60s going door to door selling vacuum cleaners as a young teenager. And he told me that like the biggest thing with his job was that he would go out and sell during the day. Well, that's the generation where 99% of the time there was a woman at home
Mhm.
with or without kids, and the man wasn't there. That was just that generation, right? Some women worked. It wasn't like it was, but not common, right? Not common. So he would go and door knock, and he would sell all these vacuums. He said he had anywhere between 50 to upwards of 90% at times where the husband would come home and like cancel the check the
Yes.
next day. So that the husband would come home and see the
Yeah.
vacuum, this giant amount of money, and be like, no, what are you thinking? And you know what I mean? Um,
Totally.
I mean, different era, but it was the same kind of thing. So high pressure sales, door to door, get some lady to buy this vacuum cleaner without both spouses there. The other spouse
Uh-huh.
gets home, nope, we're done, and it would get canceled. And so he's like, I sold like almost 100% of these vacuums. Like my close rate was like 80, 90%, but the
Yep.
refund rate was through the roof. And
Yep.
so he might actually only keep like 1 in 10, right? Or maybe 2 in 10 if he was lucky.
Wow.
And so the actual, after you accounted for the refund rate, the close rate without refunds was only like 10 to 20%.